Hello and welcome colleagues to our NPQH Teaching and Curriculum Excellence Keynote speaker session recording. I'm joined today by Kylie Spark. I'll hand over to you now, who can get us started. Whenever you're ready, Kylie.
Oh, hello everybody. My name's Kylie. I am Head of Inspiring Learners Multi-Academy Trust. We have two schools in Trafford in our trust, and I'm Head of the Trust and Executive Head Teacher at Tintersfield Primary and Bolin Primary. I also lead on a Teaching School Alliance, TTSA. I have been involved with NPQH for about the last 8 years, working closely with Yvonne, and really enjoy delivering on these sessions. And I'm also an NLE, and I've probably been working for the last 6 or 7 years in that capacity, supporting a number of schools. So I've come today to talk to you about teaching and curriculum excellence, which for me is the reason I'm in the job. This is what it's all about: teaching, learning and curriculum. For me, I wish this title had learning in it, because I think that's a key word that's missing, and it is a word that I will be referring to quite a lot through my presentation. So teaching and learning and curriculum excellence and the role of the head teacher. How do we achieve excellence in the work that we do? And I'm going to start with 3 qualities that I think are essential for achieving this, that every head teacher should have. One is vision. The second is passion. The third is emotional intelligence. And I've sort of put a 4th in brackets, which is a little bit of courage along the way, because we all need that if we are to achieve the excellence that we aspire. But ultimately, it's vision, passion, and emotional intelligence. And I'm going to talk about each of those through my presentation this morning. So I'm going to start with my vision. What's my vision for teaching curriculum excellence? Well, very simply, as a head, I want the very best teaching and learning experience for every single child in our school, so that every child achieves their potential and develops a love for learning, that they thrive, they achieve, but they also thrive in that holistic sense. And that may sound very simplistic and very woolly, and I don't mean it to be, because I'm really clear what I mean by that underneath. So for the children, I want every child to be happy, motivated, active learners, independent and resilient. I want those learning qualities to come through in every child in our school. They come to us at the age of 3, little bundles of potential. They've no idea what they're going to be good at, what they're going to enjoy, and it's our job over the 8 years they're with us to inspire them to be learners, to achieve what they can, to discover things that they can achieve that they didn't even know they could. And for me, it's achieving beyond what they thought they could. So in effect, the ceiling is lifted. I want children who love to learn. I want children who are inquisitive, who ask questions. I want children who want to come to school and love being there. So I'm really clear what I want from my children in school. But what about the staff? Well, actually, I want exactly the same thing from my staff. I want teachers who are happy, motivated, active learners, independent practitioners, resilient. I want the teachers to model the learning qualities that I want to see from the children. And ultimately, in my school, I want there to be a buzz for learning. I want there to be a buzz in the classrooms, but I want there to be a buzz in the staff room too. I want us all to want to be there, because we've all got a shared vision of achieving the very best for the children in our school. In effect, I want this learning culture to permeate everything that we do. And then the curriculum. What is it with the curriculum? The word we use is irresistible. I want our curriculum to be irresistible to the children and to the staff. I want our teaching staff to be excited by the curriculum that they're teaching. But I want the children to be excited to come to school because of all that they're learning. I want the very, very best teaching in every single classroom in my school. And the way I think about that is I've got 2 daughters of my own. I'd like to think that if they were in my school, that I wouldn't care what their journey was through the school from nursery through to year 6, because every teacher in every year group inspires and motivates their learners so that it doesn't matter. Now, to achieve that, that's excellence in teaching and curriculum through school. And that, I think, is the biggest challenge that we have of heads, to get that consistency. But that has got to be absolutely what we strive for in what we do. So there's my vision. But what's my role in achieving that? I think the first thing I would say is never underestimate the role and the influence that you have as head teacher. In fact, as head, you are the critical person in the school that makes that happen. Without you, without the head selling that vision, leading that vision, it won't come to life. But as a head, I haven't taught in a classroom for many, many years, at least not properly. So my direct influence on that quality of teaching is virtually zero these days. But what's really important as a head for me to understand is that my indirect influence is huge. In fact, I can't underestimate the impact of my indirect influence. Because ultimately, as a head, I direct, I lead, I determine the culture in the school. It starts with me. It isn't just with me, it pervades the whole of school. But as the head, you have a huge steer in that. And I want that learning culture that I talked about before running through every element of our school practice. See the role of the head as leading on the why, the what, and the how. And I'm going to take you through each one of those now and explain in some detail what I mean by that. So I'm going to start with the why. I've shared with you already my vision for teaching and learning and curriculum excellence. And I believe as part of the task for today, you may have been asked to prepare a vision to present to other members of your group today. And that's a really, really valuable exercise, thinking about what your vision is. Now, you may have planned that, you may have notes on that, you may have a presentation on that, and that's a really good starting point. But what I would urge you to do is a vision has to not be something that's read on a piece of paper. It's got to be something that comes from your heart, in essence. It's got to be something you believe. And it's got to be something you should be able to just explain and just say. It's not a learned statement. It's not something you memorize. But if it's something you truly believe in, you will be able to talk the talk and walk the walk, which is exactly what you need to do. As a head, we need to live and breathe our vision. We need to be seen to be authentic with our vision. So it's no good saying one thing, but acting in a different way. Your vision needs to be genuine. It has to be truly what you believe. And if that is the case, everything that you do will drive towards achieving that vision. And one of my favourite quotes is a Steve Jobs one. If you're working on something exciting that you really care about, you don't have to be pushed. The vision pulls you. So I've talked to you about my vision, but how does that vision become a shared vision across the school? Because it's no good me just telling everybody what the vision is. It needs to be something that we all buy into, that we live and breathe in all that we do. How do we get that vision to be a shared vision? And I've told you that I work as executive head across 2 schools, 2 quite different schools in very different contexts when I arrived at them. But what was really important for me was from the day that I arrived, my vision for teaching and learning was something that I lived and breathed. I didn't talk about it. I didn't go out there and stand up and tell everybody what it was, but I was living and breathing it in all that I was doing, in the conversations that I was having, in the actions that I was doing. I reached a point and I had to work out when it was the right time to sit with the staff and have a conversation about vision and where we were going. And at both schools, at different points when it was the right time, we had an inset day where I was working with the staff to really get from them and work towards a place where the vision that I wanted was something that we were all working towards. And on that day, through a number of activities, we got from the staff to think about, where do we want our children to be when they leave us? At what point do we want them? What values do we want to see in our school? Which for me are the how we do things, the how we live in our school. What are the values that would underpin the vision that we have? At the end of each day, we ended up with a vision and values framework that came from the staff. But if I'm really honest, I steered. The vision that we ended up with as a shared vision couldn't be one that was in a different direction to mine. It had to be going in the direction that I wanted it to be. But it was one that the staff bought into. It became a collective vision. But I'd worked with them for long enough to know that we were moving in the same direction in terms of what we were looking for. So having got a shared vision, we then looked at putting together a vision and values framework, and taking the values that we agreed as the staff, we thought about the behaviours that sat under those values. What were the behaviours that as a staff we wanted to see in our children and in ourselves that showed we were living the values and showed that we were achieving the vision? And that was really important and part of keeping our vision alive. So having determined the vision, we then were looking at how we continue to live and breathe that so that it became reality. So we started this vision and values framework, and that then, once agreed, started to underpin some of the work we were doing in school. It underpins appraisal. I'll talk a little bit about appraisal later. It was then shaping the conversations that we were having. It was shaping the behaviour and the reward system in school, so that we were starting to live and breathe what we believed. And then, of course, in turn, it starts to underpin the development plan in the school. A question I have for you is, I'm executive head across 2 schools. Do you think my vision is the same for each school? Given that both my schools are in different contexts, I arrived at them about 10 years apart from each other, and both schools had very different contexts at the time and still do. But would my vision be the same? Well, my response to that is yes, it is, because my vision for teaching and curriculum and learning excellence is the same across any school. It's my vision. What I would say, over the years of being a head teacher, my vision has evolved and developed as my own understanding of excellence has grown. But ultimately, my vision is the same. But the crucial difference is it's the journey to getting there. And that moves me on to my second part of the role of the head, which is the what. So having determined a why, and a why that I'm really clear about, and a why now that my staff are invested in because it's become a shared why, it's now important for me to understand as a head the what. And the what has to start with reality. The what is, what do you do? Before you can start to plan how you move your school towards the vision, you have to understand what reality is in your school. And this is where, for me, my 2 schools were very, very different. Don't assume. Don't just look at surface level. You have to really peel back the layers of the onion to understand where a school is at. So having started a headship role at a school, I would start with the data, I would start with Ofsted, I would start looking at the website, talking to the current head, and starting to get a very surface level of understanding. But actually all those parts of evidence, all they gave me were questions to go and ask and go and find out. Spend time just being around the school, spend time talking to the staff, and that is talking to every member of staff. Really getting an understanding of what's staff's perspective, what are the dynamics in the school, talking to the children, being out at playtime, being in the corridors, being around at lunchtime, being in the classrooms, and really understanding what the experience is like for children in the school. And then communicating with parents, spending time with parents and governors. and just getting that 360 perspective on what reality is in the school. I cannot stress enough your need to understand reality before diving into thinking about how you're going to achieve your vision. Because if you don't have an accurate understanding of reality, your strategic plan may well be completely in the wrong direction. And whilst you may achieve lots of actions, the impact may not be what you want to see. I think my final point on reality is be very aware that reality is continually changing. So whilst you may have a good understanding of reality at the beginning, you know what your vision is, and then you have your strategic plan and you then start working on that, constantly aware and constantly reevaluating reality so that the plan, which should be a real working document, can continually evolve. So having been really clear with what reality is, it's then understanding the plan of how are you going to achieve that reality. And that for me is working then on a strategic plan. A few questions I want to pose to you. One is, do you know what the reality is in every classroom in school? So if you're in primary school, you may well be a very experienced practitioner in one particular phase. You may be that year 6 deputy. In a secondary school, you will have your own individual subject specialisms, but do you really have that deep understanding across all specialisms, across all the subjects? It's really understanding where teaching and learning is at in every year group and in every phase. But having determined that, if you're then going to start planning a strategic plan to moving towards that vision, do you know what teaching curriculum excellence looks like in every phase, in every subject? And that, in all honesty, is a very big ask of any head. We ourselves will have our own experience, but it's likely to be, and our specialisms are likely to be in specific year groups, specific phases, or specific subject areas. So the first thing I would encourage you to now do is think about keeping your own knowledge and understanding up to date. And if there's one thing I urge every new head to do when I start, whenever meet or work with them, is to read. Keep yourself professionally developed. Keep your own learning sharp. Keep yourself hungry and keep abreast of all the new research that's out there. Read, read, read. There is so much amazing material out there. And you need to continually do that so that you are sharp in understanding what teaching curriculum excellence really is. And if you've got areas of the curriculum or phases in school that are less in your skill, less experience with, make those a really big priority for yourself. Secondly, thinking about training, attending any training and courses that are out there and conferences that are out there. Again, thinking about what your own professional needs are. And the third thing I would urge you to do on that is to surround yourself with like-minded people. Find other practitioners who are also hungry to keep learning, to keep finding out more, to keep developing their own pedagogical and curriculum understanding, so that you keep yourself up to date. It's only then, if you've really got that sharp and deep understanding, that you can start to plan a strategic plan over 3, 4, 5 years that really will move your school towards achieving that vision. But you need to ensure that every action that you take is going to take you a step closer, being continually focused on impact rather than action. So again, ensuring that your development plan, have that long-term strategic plan, and then a single year development plan is very sharply focused on impact. So what I would encourage you to do when writing your development plan is to start at the end. Start with what the success criteria you want, what is it you want to achieve, and then work backwards about how you're going to do that. That way it will ensure you are impact focused rather than action focused. I talked before about the qualities of a head, and the second one I talked about was passion. And it really is about you maintaining that passion for teaching, learning curriculum and sharing that and infusing that amongst the staff in your school. Leadership, as it says here, is translating that vision into reality. But that reality, that vision and that movement in reality needs to start with you. So that second quality that I talked about, passion, is so crucial. As a head, not only do you need to have that strategic plan and that strategic understanding, but you need to ooze continually passion for what you're doing. I've actually been a head teacher for 18 years, and I can honestly say I think I have more enthusiasm and passion for my job now than I did 18 years ago, because I've loved every day that I've done, but I've continually grown, and I'm continually reading and feeding my own love for teaching, learning, curriculum, and for leadership. Keep fostering that. So I've talked about the what, understanding vision, understanding reality, then planning that strategic plan. I've talked about you keeping yourself hungry, keeping your learning, so that you maintain that passion in your school to keep that vision alive. That passion will then feed into the learning conversations that I would urge you to be having with your staff. And that takes me on to the third role of leadership. We've talked about the why, the vision. We've talked about the what, the reality and strategic plan. The third question is the how. And for me, the how is how you work with your staff. Your staff are your greatest asset. They are your most expensive asset, but they are your greatest asset. It's through your staff that your vision will be achieved. And I cannot emphasize enough, being a leader is not just about what you do, but it's absolutely about how you do it. And for me, it's about inspiring and empowering the team that work with you. And those two crucial words, it's how do you now inspire and empower your staff so that your strategic plan is carried out, achieves the impact, and achieves your vision. And for me, that is professional development at the heart. And I've always been a strong believer it's do with, not do to staff. So I'm going to give a few examples now of how I have done that over the years, both at Tintersfield and more recently at Bolin. And I talked before about appraisal. So I'm going to start with appraisal process. And I talked before about how our vision and values framework underpins our appraisal. So when all our staff come into an appraisal meeting, they're asked to come in beforehand thinking about a couple of questions, and we start the appraisal process asking them how they've lived the values in the past year, giving some examples of how they've lived them, and to give us an example of a value that they haven't lived as well, or the one that they think they could live more. And that starts a conversation, not just about what they've done as teachers or TAs or the office or the site manager. It's all our staff, but it's not just about the what they've done, but it's really thinking about the how they've done it, how they've carried out, how they are living our values. We also ask our staff beforehand to come with the teacher standards, and we ask them to identify 2 or 3 standards that they feel they've really lived and breathed over the past year, and a couple of the standards that they feel they could further develop. And again, that moves into a conversation that we have with our teaching staff with this, about how they can further develop their practice. I talked before about inspiring and empowering. This for me is about empowering. I want our teaching staff to make sense of their own reality, to understand their own strengths, their areas for development, and to be motivated to continue developing and working it. This isn't about finding fault. This is about true professional development. So when they come to our appraisal meeting, we will have a conversation about the teacher standards. I will have my thoughts, they will have their thoughts, and we will have an open and honest discussion. But it's a professional development discussion, not a me telling them which are the areas of the standards I want them to work more closely on next year. For all our other staff, we ask them to come with a job description, and we ask them to do exactly the same thing, 2 or 3 areas that they've worked really effectively on in the past year, a couple of areas they feel they could further develop. And again, it's the same conversation that we're having, getting them to self-reflect. If there's a difference between what they think and what we think, then we come back to, we will have that conversation, but it will be an open and honest conversation. But given that we have a lot of conversations through the year anyway, professional development conversations, feedback through any form of monitoring, that actually the conversations we have are never a surprise. And I'm certainly not throwing something on somebody that they weren't expecting, because it's a continual conversation. So I've talked a little about appraisal. I'm then going to move on now to about CPD. And it comes back to this professional development of staff. At our school and across our trust, it's about CPD with the staff, not to the staff. So all our staff meetings, all the courses attended, all development opportunity within school, conversations, pairing, mentoring, coaching, all the different strategies that we use. We're very open with our staff, explaining why we do this, what the purpose is, how it links with the school development plan. But in those appraisal meetings, we're having a very, very focused conversation about how it's relevant for them and how the professional development plan is going to impact them over the next year. In turn, those discussions inform the professional development plan. So the individual conversations we have with our teachers and our teaching staff then feed back into the development plan and the CPD programme that we build. For us, the development of any form of teaching and learning policy is very much done with and not done to. And I'm going to give you an example of a policy we've developed at Bolin over the last probably 18 months around feedback. So feedback and marking was an area we most certainly needed to work on. And we'd had quite a lot of conversation in the leadership team about what that could look like. We've been doing all our own research and really done a lot of thinking on it. But the first staff meeting that we had with all the teaching staff, we went in not with a draft policy at all, but actually we went in with a series of questions. And the questions were, we believe we need to develop our feedback policy further. Why do you think that is? What are your thoughts? What are the strengths in what we're doing at the moment? What do you think are the areas for development? And we had a very open conversation with the staff about this. What I found was the feedback from the staff was very aligned with what we as leadership were saying. So actually, we were all on the same page with it. We then had a lot of conversations about the why. Why is feedback important? What sort of culture needs to be in place so that feedback is given in the right way and is received in the right way? And we had a lot of conversations about the culture of trust. And actually, we had a lot of conversation about feedback, not just with the children, although that's what in essence the policy was about, feedback on learning, but actually feedback in its broadest sense, feeding back to other staff when there's been any form of monitoring in the school, whether that's a subject leader or SLT. And actually it led to a really, really in-depth conversation of thinking about how we both receive and give feedback. And actually that took us as a staff to a much deeper place. The next step was to go in with some draft ideas around what an effective feedback policy could look like, but that was based on all current reading and research. So we went in with a couple of staff meetings presenting our thoughts, but it wasn't our ideas as such, it was ideas we'd gleaned from good practice we'd seen, from reading and research we'd done. And we presented our draft feedback policy and then gave the staff a week to go away and think about it, come back with any feedback, and we'll have another staff meeting to talk about it. It was at that point when we'd had the feedback that SLT then go away and finalise the policy. But the point for us was that at every step of the way, the staff had been heavily involved in the development of that policy. So at the point where we finalised it and we went back to staff with it, and then we say, this is our policy and this must now be consistently and robustly implemented through school, we already had the buy-in. Staff not only understood the why and the what and the how, but they'd been part of the conversation. Yes, it takes a lot longer. It would have been much quicker to have done a staff meeting to give it to everybody, but actually the impact long-term is far greater. And that for me is just one example I wanted to share with you about how we've empowered the teachers and hopefully inspired the teachers. And we've had a really powerful professional dialogue across our school. The final area on the how I just want to touch on is about growing leaders. For me, leadership is about growing more leaders. And everybody in our school is a leader within their own domain. The teacher is the leader in that classroom. The teaching assistant is the leader in that group of 6 children that they're running an intervention with. The SLT are leaders on a bigger scale, but we are all leaders in the school. And actually for me, developing and empowering our staff to to become effective leaders, whether it's subject leader, middle leader, senior leader, that distributive leadership not only takes a huge weight and workload off SLT, but actually is far more effective than SLT leading it. I fully recognise that our early years lead in our school has got far more knowledge and experience than I have, and far more skill in leading early years than I have. But what is important is that I fully understand early years and can hold her to account. But actually, she's leading early years and she's been given the freedom to do that within the boundaries of our vision, our values, and the policies that we've agreed around the school. Any change she wants to implement within her department, absolutely fine, but come and talk to us about it first. As much as anything, because we want to monitor and see that change and see the impact of it, to see whether or not it's working, whether there's things we can learn from that then we can roll out across school. So I urge you to think about how you grow leaders, how you can do that through fostering a coaching culture within your school. So I've talked about the how, I've talked about the why, and I've talked about the what. And I just want to finish with some top tips that sum up really a lot of what I've said. And I've got 6. The first one is vision. Have clarity of vision and spend some time really thinking about that, reading, researching, and understanding that. Every word that you use in your vision, you need to be able to articulate and understand. So if I'm using the word active, what do I mean by an active learner? Then be able to talk the talk and, more importantly, walk the walk. Live and breathe that vision in everything that you do. And I did that for 18 months at Tintersfield before I even spoke about it. But I knew every conversation I was having, every action I was having was true to the vision I was trying to aspire our school to move towards. Because ultimately, as head, all eyes are on you. Secondly, know what high quality looks like. To be a leader, you need to be credible. To be a head teacher, you need to be credible. So again, read, grow yourself, see yourself as a learner, model being a learner. I started at the beginning saying I wanted a learning culture in my schools. That learning culture absolutely starts with me. But be open and honest about that, the reading that you're doing, the learning that you're doing, but keep yourself hungry, keep your passion for the job alive. Thirdly, surround yourself with like-minded people. There are times when there can be a lot of moaning in this job. There can be times when we're ground down by the operational side of what we do. Find people that share your passion, that share your hunger, that are eager to learn, because they will keep your passion alive. Number 4, know your school. Really understand where your school is at the beginning and then continually in your journey as a head. Don't assume anything. Go out and find out. And you need to do that by being a presence in your school. The 5th bit of advice I'm going to give you is honest conversations. Start as you mean to go on having honest conversations with staff, but that doesn't mean aggressive conversations. It doesn't mean having difficult and confrontational conversations, but start having honest conversations so that you're fostering a professional dialogue. Sometimes it does involve difficult conversations, and if those conversations are needed to be had, I urge you to spend time thinking before you go in and have them. Reflect on what's the message you really want to give and how do you want that person to feel at the end, and think about how that conversation needs to go. Those conversations need to be had, but they can be done in a way that leaves somebody feeling motivated to achieve it rather than deflated and fed up. And the 6th one is nurture your staff. And if I come back to those qualities I spoke about at the beginning, the 3rd one was emotional intelligence. I cannot stress enough how emotionally intelligent leader you need to be. You need to understand your staff and how to get the very best from them. For me, coaching leadership is the way to achieve that. It takes time, it's built on relationships, and it's built on trust. But actually, what sort of a leader do you want to be? Understand yourself as a leader, and then grow yourself as a leader, but bring your staff with you, nurture them. So I'm going to finish with 4 E's that I think and I hope sum up my presentation today. The first one is express. Express your vision clearly. Have clarity so that everybody understands what you're about and where the school's going. Then it's engage. Get your staff on board, your parents, your governors. Engage and empower and inspire them. Get that vision to become a shared vision so that they're on the journey with you and they're motivated to do so. The third E is empower. Empower your staff so that they are driving your vision forward. They're not being pushed by you, the vision pulls them, but their own motivation inspires them to work hard and to drive towards achieving it. Empower them to reflect upon their own effectiveness and to continually develop and improve themselves. To see professional dialogue and conversation as development, not criticism. Empower them. And then finally, set your expectations high. Don't lower them, set them high and expect nothing but the best. That will take time to achieve, but keep those expectations high, lift the ceiling, any lid on expectation, the ceiling, and whether that's on children, individual children, cohorts, the whole school, subjects, your staff, lift the lid and get your expectations as high as you can. If you express your vision clearly, engage your whole school community, empower everyone so that they're moving forward with you under their own steam and expect the highest standards, you will achieve your vision. Thank you.